well, that was exciting, huh? I have nothing prepared, so if you guys just want to start firing away.
When did you first target Young?
I think, really a couple years ago when our area scouts went through, Robert Haynes went through, they really liked him then. And then just over the last couple of years, the study of him was something that they really felt strongly about. When we met in February, there was just overwhelming conviction for him during our draft meetings. Coach actually had just gotten here at the time. He's putting the staff together. He came in, he was a part of that. He heard it because we wanted him to hear how strongly these guys feel about him and what they know about him, kind of set the table for him so he can go do his evaluation with the staff. So we were a little bit further ahead. But throughout the process, he checked every box that we had. We tested him, we talked to him, we had dinner with him. And just every time we met with him, we felt more and more convicted. And we liked all the guys, but Bryce was a guy that we really felt strongly about.
So when you guys knew that pick, when you had that conversation on Monday, what was that conversation like? What was the reaction between you two?
Well, he likened it to a proposal, so that was interesting. It was quick. It was literally it was pretty obvious. We already knew, but I went in, just asked him. It was really a 5-second conversation, and then we moved on to, okay, what's the plan next? What do we do next?
Frank, did you take a little more convincing just because of his size? You said at the combine it was an issue. Where did you ultimately come down on that?
No, where it wasn't like I took more convincing. I just am always committed to the process. And so, listen, Scott couldn't have handled this any better. And like he said, it was very clear. I got hired, and then a couple weeks later, we were in draft meetings, and I sat in this meeting that Scott's running, and they're talking, and Scott and all the scouts are talking about all the quarterbacks. They're reading up all of them. We're watching film. The scouts are talking about them, and basically Scott proposes a question at the end of that meeting, like, hey, if we trade up, where's our conviction? And it was unanimous with every guy in that room, starting from Scott on down, that Bryce was a guy. That was great for me to hear. But what I appreciate about the way Scott handled it, it was like, hey, he's like, Frank, you take your time. You hear how we feel, but, just you and the coaches get after it. And, and it wasn't much convincing. You just watch the tape. There's a lot said about the size. At the end of the day, there's a lot of factors that go into it, but we're coaches, we're scouts. We watch the tape. And when you watch the tape, Bryce Young's the best player.
Scott, during the presentation out there, you had mentioned that you guys liked all 3 quarterbacks. We've talked about all 4.
I think it was all 4. I think I said all the quarterbacks. I don't know if that was heard wrong. But that was, it would be all 4.
I guess from your guys' standpoint, when you were breaking down the games of each one of these players, was there a play or something that came up constantly from an on-field tape perspective that you guys kept going back to?
There wasn't one play. That was just it. There were lots of kind of highlight plays, but, there were so many. He's had such a prolific career, and he makes all the plays. Every kind of play you want to see a quarterback make. Situationally, in the big moments, he makes the little throws, the big moments, the big throws, so they're all over the tape.
You mentioned about 20% of your offense would be adapted based off of your quarterback. What does the offense look like under Bryce Young?
Yeah, great question, and we've been talking about that really for a couple weeks as a coaching staff. Won't get into all the particulars, but that's what we philosophically are asking ourselves. Going back and watching his tape even more now, watching it not just from an evaluation standpoint, but what was he he was so good at so many things in college, but we always like to look at his college tape, see what concepts that he was really good at in college that are already in our offense. That's a good starting point, and then see the kind of plays that he makes, how he likes to throw the ball, when he's throwing certain routes, what style of concepts. There's a lot of different, we call families of passes. So that'll be what we'll do over, really from now until training camp.
Frank, how much did his resume of lifelong winning matter?
It mattered a lot, and that's one of the things that Scott really was clear on from the start, right? That this guy's a winner. And he's been the best player on the best team against the best competition from the time he was, 8 years old, literally. So, yeah, it meant a lot.
In you guys' eyes, does Bryce come in as QB1?
You know, Scott and I have talked about this, and you know, right now he'll come in, and we're gonna, you know, he'll have to earn it. You know, he'll have to earn it. Obviously, that's the way it should be, and so we'll know when the right time is. That'll be a decision that Scott and I and the coaching staff, you know, will continue to look at. But he's got enough going on right now. I just want him to come in and learn the offense and not have to worry about stepping into the limelight and doing all. Let's come in and learn the offense, get to know these guys. When we step out on the field the first time, you know, he'll be in that number 2 spot, and then we'll just progress from there at the right time. We'll know when that time is.
How big a role did his S2 score play, where he was almost historically high on it in the 98th percentile?
Yeah, the one thing about the S2 score, I think people have made a big deal about that this year. It's just one small piece of the puzzle. It comes back to the tape. It comes back to the meetings with us. You know, how do they do with the coaches on the draft board? You know, or not the draft board, in the you know, on the board, in the boardroom with them. That's what really matters. But it's just a small piece. It's a nice piece. It reaffirms things. But all it would do is like make us ask a question, go back. Do we miss something? If it was different than what he had.
Was there a moment, Frank was asked this, but was there a moment for you, Scott, in one of those meetings or watching one of the tapes where you were just like, okay?
Yeah, I think, you know, during that dinner that we had, you know, we had asked him a question, and then he just went on. He went on for about 10 minutes, and it was not just answering a question, it was the level of detail in that, and just how precise it wasn't something that he was kind of making up as he went to tell a good story. You can tell he actually did this, and this is part of his process, and he's unique that way, and that's kind of what stood out.
Remember what the question was?
I think it was like what are your practice habits during the week, or what is your process during the week? And I think he started like on a Sunday, and he went on and on. He got to about Tuesday. It was like 10 minutes into it. So
At one point, Scott and I, Mr. Tepper, kind of made eye contact, like, this is crazy. And in particular, like Scott is saying, you know, he got into how he was studying the film and some of the things that he said about that. Like Scott, we just, you know, I looked at Mr. Tepper, he looked at Scott, you know, and it was like, this is like next level stuff. And listen, we've all been around and we've all heard good stuff. The other guys said good stuff too, but like this was just at a level that was different.
We'll take a couple more. We'll take a couple more. Two
Scott,
more.
what kind of feedback did you get from Saban about him?
you know, we actually we had the opportunity to sit with him, and it was Coach and Mr. Tepper and Nicole and Josh, and it was his conviction on him. He couldn't say a bad thing. We challenged him, and he was just so positive about him and his process, and you could tell he really believes in him. And I think that was a great meeting, and we appreciate his time because that really helped in this process.
Hey Scott, when did you inform Bryce that you had made the decision, and what was his reaction? And how did that go down?
He first found out when Mr. Tepper got on the phone and told him. We didn't tell him beforehand. We didn't tell the agent. We kind of kept it a mystery. I mean, it was out there, publicly quite a bit, but until you actually make that call, that was the first time he heard from us.
And what was his reaction?
You'd have to ask Mr. Tepper. I'm sure he's excited.
You want to know?
Yeah.
So I got on the phone. I saw Bryce at the Super Bowl. You see a bunch of these guys at parties and such. So I saw Bryce and I said, Bryce, remember when we were at the Super Bowl? I told you we were going to pick a quarterback, and I wasn't kidding. And I said, you want to trade in some Sweet Home Alabama for some Sweet Carolina? So he was just excited. He was like, I don't know if you could see him on the screen. He was like a little tenseness in his face, but then he was like, you could feel him just like, I'm so happy, sort of thing through the phone.
Why did you guys wait so long to tell him? Why not tell him a day or two before? Why keep it under wraps?
Why not?
Other questions, Mr.
Dave, you set the bar high out there for him. I know that's been your goal since you got here, though. But mentioning the Super Bowl, could you elaborate on that?
Well, when we went through the process of quarterbacks, listen, just as you guys know, we went through a very deep process with the head coach, found what we believe is the best head coach we could find, and then set the head coach free to get the best staff he could find. Okay, so that was what we did. So, and then when we were going through the process of these quarterbacks, one of the questions we ask ourselves is, which one of these guys will be, a guy that can take us here? What's the probability that this guy can take? Because there's no sure thing. So, not to talk about all the different guys, but we thought this guy had the highest probability of winning Super Bowls. And I think for myself, and I don't want to speak for Frank, and I think he feels, and Scott, we feel the same way. Listen, you want to win Super Bowls. And, there's no sure thing here, but it's a probability sort. And we thought this guy has the best probability of winning us Super Bowls. The way he throws the ball, the way he's a point guard, how you can use the different players in the field, how you might not have to have as many elite receivers because he's a point guard, right? So he distributes the ball to people with routes. So you can save some money there. We believe we can save money other places because of him and put that money into the defensive side of the ball. So it's like this is a guy that when you talk about here for us, for this Carolina Panther team, from from the time I guess Matt Roll and talk about the process we went through. Defense, first get the defense set with Scott, get the offensive line. Okay, this year with Frank, we went in and we got in free agency the different pieces we needed for wide receivers. We think we have some great route runners in Thielen and Hayden and other people here, and so that's somewhat intentional. Thinking about what we'll need if we have the point guard. Okay, and then with Scott, he has other people in this draft he's going to be thinking about. So,
Dave,
it's a process.
Dave, was this the most you've been involved in the process of draft up to the pick?
Listen, I just set the process. These guys do the work. So that's it's. Look, I mean, you guys have to understand. We were here a year and a half trying to figure out. I didn't know what the heck. I was on the business side. And so, for the first year and a half, I was trying to figure out what was going on. And then COVID hit. And so we're out of the building for 2.5 more years. And then we're in the building, have a better chance last year to see what was going on, what was right, wrong, and different. And so, we just, and with Scott now, together. And so we just, went through the process. We wanted to, a certain head coach, a certain type of head coach. And we wanted the guy that could find the best head coaches and could attract, the best position coaches that we could possibly, get. And Frank ran a fantastic process for finding these guys. And look, I mean, I give great credit. I actually complimented Frank today. I don't give him compliments that often. It was like one compliment this year. So usually it's a compliment. I take it back a little bit somewhere else. But it was a straight out compliment. He went through the process, found the best, really, really tirelessly looking for the best person, not the person he knew, but the best person out there, and I think it's reflected in the staff we have, so it's a great testament to him.
What Scott was talking about, there were discussions about trading up, and you were vocal about being aggressive and trading up for number one. Can you talk about that and why that was important to you, to not just jump to maybe 2 or 3, but to number one?
Well, the way the process worked, I'll tell a little bit about the process. So it was basically, and Scott's a better one to tell the story because he's really more. I'm on the outside, I'm like I don't know if you know this at all, but I know something about numbers and stats and stuff like that in my head. So I can figure out this stuff, that stuff. A lot of stuff I have no idea. And one of my great strengths is and I'm getting stronger at this, by the way, is knowing how stupid I am sometimes. Okay, so when we were in there, we had a trade to go up to 2. And it was a 3-way trade with Chicago. And we were going to go up to 2. And the Texans were going to trade up to 1. And Chicago was going to be down to 2, and we were going to trade with Chicago. And so we were waiting. We had that trade kind of arranged on Wednesday, I think, Scott. Is that the timeline? I think
Wednesday.
And so, we waited. And you have to appreciate it. Like, I come from a world where you do trades. And I don't love when trades don't happen right away. So I'm driving Scott crazy. I have to apologize for Scott for this, by the way. I'm saying, what's going on with these guys? This doesn't feel right. What's going on? And so Wednesday goes, Thursday goes, we get into Friday, and the Texans changed their mind about the trade, about doing the 3-way trade. So we got in the afternoon, it was Friday afternoon, and Scott talked to Poles, and basically he got a value that he would accept for us to move up to 1. And that was late Friday afternoon. And basically, we knew that we had to make a decision then because he wanted to get a trade done. We thought that there were other people, including the Raiders, that had better potential trades on the line. And if we waited, they may come and jump us if we waited till beyond that day. Because, we knew that we were the bird in hand. They knew they had to trade with us, a trade that they could like. And we didn't want to go with what we thought might be a better trade from us, because we're ninth, right? You got seventh there who wants to do it, and other people want to do it. So we all decided that this was the right thing to do for the incremental amount we could trade up. And it was a joint decision. Everybody was on board with it, I think, at the time. And we knew that if we didn't do it then, we may lose it. And so we just made that decision, all together, just talking it out, 15, 20 minutes. Scott called up. He can tell you the rest. I wasn't on the phone. So, and I think does that pretty much...
Yeah. We just called Ryan at that point, and, we've been working through it, and, the important part is just that constant communication that we had, so it wouldn't die. And Friday it was just like, hey, what's it going to take? If this isn't going to happen this way, we want to make sure it happens. We want to get to one in order to control this decision. And Ryan was great with it, and we made the trade.
Hey, Dave, we'll do this last one, and I can jump back to the draft one.
Probably wisely so. Scott has been very complimentary of you throughout the process of hiring Frank, and Frank himself as well with the coaching staff. And they say you have a different viewpoint than they do, and in particular the questions you ask in those interviews. What is your viewpoint? What's your perspective that's different? What do you look for?
Look, I mean, I don't know if it's that different. I mean, I come from a world of analysis, okay, and trying to figure out what companies are worth, and asking my analysts like deep questions. So that's the world I come from. So I just, in this process, I put the best that I know. I actually am not bad at this other thing I do. I'm better at that than I am at this, to tell you the truth. But so I took some of that world into here, that analytical sort of world, and try to think of the different factors that we want to find out beyond what these guys did. And listen, to tell you the truth, it's just one addition. This is a process, and Scott and the scouts. Listen, that's 90% of the work. Okay, 90%. Then, Frank's another 7% or 8% or 9% of the work, and I add that last 1%. Okay, so just to give the credit where due, the credit's over here. And, this is truly a process. I can't emphasize enough, true to this process this time, okay? Not all the time in other past years, but this is process in the coach, process in getting this quarterback and not leaving a stone unturned. Okay, so this is truly, in everything we're doing and everything that we did with the coaches, and when Frank was hired, the process of do we have the best person? Do we have the best person? And true to the process, Scott, true to the process. We're not messing around. Okay, I'll say it that way. And so, but the work is here. Okay, truly.
All right, thank y'all very much. We'll meet y'all back to the draft room.